Good evening and welcome to the joint San Pedro Neighborhood Council's Planning and Land Use Committees meeting. We have a number of people here from Northwest. We have a couple people, looks like 3 people from Coastal and three now from Central. So all 3 neighborhood councils do have quorums. So as always, before we make any decision on any item, members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments. So if you have a comment on an item that's not on the agenda, you can provide that comment during the public comment portion of the meeting, which is at the end of the meeting. Robin. So I'm Diana Nave, and I chair the Northwest Planning and Land Use Committee. We've just been joined by Robin Rudisell, who chairs the Coastal Planning and Land Use Committee, and the chair of the Central Planning and Land Use Committee, Javier, is on the road and will be trying to join us by phone, but we may or may not have connections with Javier tonight. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead, and I do need to ask Jimena, who just joined. Jimena, if you are a student and need student credit, why don't you raise your hand so I know that when I see you. Okay, no hand. Okay, so first item on our agenda is the proposed changes to the LADOT dash and changes to the metro lines. And so I think the first presenter is LADOT dash, is that correct?
Yes.
And I think I already made you a co-host.
I believe so, yes.
So you can present your.
Okay. Okay, I apologize that one. A permissions issue. Share. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, we can all see it now.
As part of the in 2017, there some council approved changes. City council approved in.
Can't hear you too well.
Okay. Let me speak louder. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now we
Okay.
can.
Great. So here's the so on December, in early December, we're going to be launching a new dash alignment for dash San Pedro, and we've been working with Metro.
Can't hear them at all.
I'm sorry. Is it too quiet still?
I don't know. I didn't hear what that was.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. So we've been working in conjunction with Metro and planning the new route, which was a collection of partner. There were different it was based on community input and different partner agencies to create the new route. And so some of the changes that we'll be doing is we'll be going down First Street instead of Summerlin and picking up the old where the 205 Metro Line 205 currently goes. And then most importantly, we'll be going down Leland and 14th and Leland streets to serve San Pedro High School students and Dana Middle School students. Okay, and some of the areas that where our where the old Dash San Pedro used to go will be picked up by serviced by Metro. So as I mentioned earlier, the service change is based on the 2017 City Council approved comprehensive transit service analysis study of all of the city's transit services, including Dash, Commuter Express, and City Ride program. And LA DOT conducted an extensive public outreach campaign to solicit input from communities, elected offices, and partner agencies. And here's a little more detail on the new route. So as I mentioned, it goes down first instead of Summerlin. It turns on Pacific instead of Center. Dash San Pedro will no longer serve the waterfront. However, Commuter Express line 142 will continue to serve the waterfront. And as I mentioned, it runs down 14th Street to Leland to serve San Pedro High School and Dana Middle School. And it still completes the loop around Alma, 25th, Western, and 19th. It also maintains connection with the Metro Silver, Metro J line. So here's a little closer look at the stops close to the schools. So we've got on the southbound route, there's a stop at 14th Street and Mailer Street. And on the northbound route, we have stops at 14th and Parker on the right, and Leland between 15th and 16th Street. And so here's a quick look at some of the connecting lines with that are connecting lines with Dash San Pedro, and some of the how it links up with Commuter Express and some of the Metro lines, and it's so a lot of the areas that Metro's next gen study, the changes that Metro is making, a lot of those changes, they're no longer going to go down First Street, but we will go down First Street, and some of the areas where we are no longer servicing Metro will still provide service there. And if you have any further questions about this, please contact Kay Sasaki, LADOT, and it's k.sasaki@lacity.org. And see, Craig, we can do some, I'm going to let Scott go, and then we can have some more questions after he presents also. Okay.
Yeah, Craig Goldfarb has a question. Craig, can you take it now on the desk?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell what's going on here between all ahs and ums, but so Matt, I was looking over this, and you said that you guys scoped the neighborhoods and stuff, and did a lot of outreach, which is, I haven't heard any of it, but Northwest San Pedro's been on the record for quite a few years now of having the Dash run all the way down from the shopping center up on the top down to Target. And as far as I know, you guys been ignoring us on that. I'm sure that most of the people from on here can see the utility of that, and I don't see it addressed. Do you have any input or why you didn't address it?
Okay, do you know? Okay, hey, are you on the call?
Matt, I didn't catch an answer.
Okay, so yeah, I would have to get back to you on that. Again, as
Matt, this is Scott with Metro.
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for the presentation and for the question from the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. We did do a meeting of the Northwest. I think it might have been the Neighborhood Issues Committee or something like that about a month or two ago. I don't know if Matt was on the call, but Kay Sasaki and I were on the call, and we talked about that extension to Target. And we can maybe come back to that after the Metro presentation, if that's okay, in case there's answers in the next presentation or answers to your question. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
I see a couple more people that have questions. Greg? Ellis?
I think I can hold my question until after the Metro presentation.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And
And
the other one was, Kay, did you want to say something about it? This may be an answer. And
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me okay?
yeah,
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Craig, for that input. So, obviously we definitely want to increase service in, San Pedro as much as possible. But there are some limitations with the amount of resources that we have. There's only a certain number of buses and certain number of like operational dollars that were allocated. And so I believe Target is a little too far out, and then once we get too far out, it kind of stretches our resource, and it gets to a point where we need to pull buses and drivers from other routes and things like that. So we want to stay true to what the nature of the dash, which is to be like a local circulator. And I think Scott can talk about how all of our lines integrate, but just wanted to address that. Yes, definitely I think transit service in San Pedro is much needed, and as much as we can, we're open to expanding it. So thank you for your input.
okay, with that, let's go ahead and hear the Metro presentation.
Can I subsidiary question? I don't get it because there's only a mile distance
Craig,
going up and down, so I didn't understand the thing that it would stretch it.
Craig, let's listen to the Metro presentation and then come back. And if you've still got a question after the Metro presentation, okay? That's what we said we would do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Diana. Yeah, so I'm Scott Green with Metro Service Planning. And similar to LA DOT, we did a restructuring study as well called the Next Gen Bus Study, which was approved by our MTA board in 2020 after a lot of workshops and outreach. And so I'm here tonight to let you know about some of the service changes coming up on three metro routes in San Pedro, 205, 246, and 550. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I think save some time for questions and answers. But here's the overview of the San Pedro transit network, all the way down to Paseo del Mar on the south, and showing the dash up in the northwest corner at Western Avenue and Park. The other routes are all Metro, and you can see some dashed segments in there. That's where the Metro service is changing, and those segments will be discontinued. For example, on 13th Street is probably the most noticeable one on there. That's where the 205 runs today. But with our next gen study, it was determined that the 205 is too complicated, it's too difficult to use because it serves so many different streets in San Pedro, wanders all over the place. So the recommendation was to simplify the service, make it easier to use, and consolidate to 7th Street in both directions. So the new 205 will serve 7th Street between Weymouth and Harbor in both directions. Today, it only serves it in one direction, and the 550 serves it in the other direction. So we're gonna make it much easier to understand in that the 205 will be two-way on 7th Street. At the Weymouth corners, we've had bus service there for many years, and we want to keep those services intact with the 205. So we are in the reroute. We're working with the Bureau of Engineering to get some new bus stops, which are shown in black on this particular map. 2 new bus stops at First and Western in both directions, and because the dash will now be turning at First Street, this will be a transfer point between the 205 and the dash. And then at 7th and Weymouth, we have sort of a unique routing for the southbound 205 on Western. Instead of making a left turn onto 7th, it's going to continue down Western and make a left on 9th and come around to serve the existing stop on Weymouth Avenue at 7th Street before right turn. We also have a new route in downtown San Pedro, where we're going to establish a terminal at Harbor Boulevard and 6th Street near the Maritime Center. And after the bus takes a short break there on Harbor Boulevard, excuse me, they'll leave departing north on Harbor to left 3rd, left center, left 5th Street. No stops. That's just a turnaround loop for operational purposes, so we can get the bus turned around and back onto 7th Street, where we will be running in both directions. With line 246, service will pretty much remain the same, especially in the coastal San Pedro area. We continue to run down to Paseo del Mar, and we're mostly on Pacific between, we are on Pacific actually between Paseo del Mar and Front Street. There will be a new route for the 246, which you can see on the map here from Channel Road to Pacific Coast Highway. The route will be extended to serve Gaffey Street. So we'll be picking up that target location on Gaffey, and I think there's a Home Depot up there as well. So those businesses will continue to have service. The reason we are rerouting the 246 all the way up to PCH is because the next gen study discontinues the 550, which today runs all the way from San Pedro to Exposition Park. The segments south of the Harbor Gateway Transit Center to San Pedro will be discontinued because they're largely already served by other routes. And the main missing segment, if the 246 were not rerouted onto Gaffey, would not be covered. So that's why we are rerouting the 246. So we already talked about the dash, but I have the route here as well as Matt showed it, that it'll operate on First Street instead of Summerlin. So focusing in on sort of your central San Pedro area, this is again the transit network with all routes shown except for the Palos Verdes route 225, which also runs on 7th Street. And then backing up to the higher level view, which shows the entire San Pedro area. By the way, the 950 is also known as the J line or Silver line, and there are no changes for the 950. It'll continue to run the same as it does today. So I just have a few slides to close out here from the next gen bus study, which which was approved by the MTA board, and now we are implementing these changes here in December 11th of 2022. The 205 will run every 30 minutes all day long. 246 the same, it'll run every 30 minutes all day long, including that extension, and we are going to keep the owl service as well, which runs late night. And then the 550, as I mentioned, would be discontinued. So I know we went through these kind of quickly, but implementation is coming up here December 11th. So in the next few weeks, we will be getting some signs out on the bus stops to let the customers know of the changes. And then about 3 or 4 days before the changes on December 11th and 3 or 4 days after, we'll also have ambassadors out in the San Pedro community talking to the riders and making sure that they're aware of the changes, which will be advertised, with brochures on board the bus and also social media and through our metro.net website. So that's some of the efforts we make whenever there's a service change, and we expect to do the same in San Pedro. And that's the last slide. So we can turn it back to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Craig, did you want to go ahead and ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, it's still the same question is why is, I hear this, what you said, and it doesn't make any sense. It's a mile between where you turn around up there at that shopping center and Target. So how can that stress the system? You've cut off here and there, you have to go back and forth and down. I just don't get it. It just looks to me like you guys had decided, oh, we're going to service this part and we're going to ignore the request of citizens in Northwest San Pedro. This was a very clear request. Is there, I can't understand why you are ignoring it. Thank you.
Hey, did you want to say anything else?
Sure, yeah. Craig, thanks for your comment. I definitely, understand, where you're coming from. In a car, it's like, I think it's like a 5-minute drive. Maybe on a bus, it's a little longer, maybe like 10 minutes. But, although it may seem kind of a short distance, like over this route, I think runs 7 days a week. And then when you add that up, it really adds up to like, hundreds of thousands of dollars in operation costs. And I think when you make this extra stretch here, it requires an extra vehicle to keep the headways where that we want to be at, which is, I think, 20 minutes. And so, although the change seems kind of little, or pretty easy to do, like there is definitely a strain on the resources that happens. So, and when you go up to Target, it kind of does like makes the route meander a little bit. And I think this route is supposed to be like a quick neighborhood circulator, and when you keep extending that route, it kind of deviates from that purpose. So I think we want to keep the nature of what Dash San Pedro has been doing, and so I think this is in conjunction with the changes that Metro is making. I think we have great coverage in San Pedro.
Okay, Elise?
Thank you, Diana. Hi, yes, thanks for the great presentation. And Scott, my day job is I work with the San Pedro Chamber of Commerce with hundreds of cruise ship passengers. So I appreciate simplifying the routes. Love 7th in both directions. My question is, as the waterfront, LA waterfront is built out, the new West Harbor potential amphitheater on the waterfront, will you look at numbers and maybe increase service? Will that be an ongoing study that or development that you'll be looking at as it grows and is built out?
Yeah, thanks, Elise, for the question on the the new waterfront. For sure, we'll keep an eye on that, and if it is as popular as some people want or expect it to be, and a lot of riders want to go there, then for sure we would need to reconsider our service levels. But for now, every 30 minutes, all day long, is what we have planned for line 205, and that will be going to 6th and Harbor, which is pretty close to the waterfront.
Right. No, it's perfect. It's a perfect spot there to walk into the waterfront. And then another quick question, if I may, are you removing benches as you adjust these routes? I have a very distressed senior that's coming into our chamber office because a bus bench has been removed at 7th and Pacific. Is it within Matt, is LA City looking, or are you guys taking out or replacing benches?
Yeah, I think LADOT doesn't directly address like the shelters and stuff, but recently Bureau of Street Services got funding and got approval to buy and install a lot more bus shelters. So I think those should be showing up in neighborhoods around Los Angeles soon. And if there are extra, there's going to be a replacement of a lot of those benches and shelters, and within the next year or two there's going to be a reshuffling. So if you see a bench or a shelter that's not there anymore, it doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It could come back. It could be a new bench. So we do look at ridership, and we provide that info to street services, and they make the determination on like which stop should get a new one, or like if they don't have a bench already, like where can we shuffle and find a bench that we can put there and things like that.
Can
Great.
you
Thank you
check,
so much. I'll let him know.
can you check specifically on the one at 7th and Pacific and find out what the story is on it for us?
Sure. I can look into that.
Find out if there's plans to replace it or what's going on.
Okay.
Greg Ellis was next, I think.
Yeah, just one general observation and then one more specific question. The general observation is that we would really appreciate it, not just Metro and Dash, but for all presenters to try and get your presentations to us as soon as possible. I think Diana got a presentation this afternoon, and it just makes it tough for us on the committees to review everything in detail before the meeting. But going to my specific question, during the Dash presentation, there was a map near the end that showed the new route, but without any of the stops highlighted. And there was one slide near the end of Scott's presentation that did show all the routes with all the new stops. It looked from that the new Dash routes will have connectivity and stops in common so that people can move at the same locations from the Dash to the commuter express line and the Metro lines and the Silver line. I just wanted to confirm that that's the case.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, wherever possible, we do try to maintain transfer points.
Okay, thank you.
Dan Dixon.
Thank you. This is a comment, I think. Craig's question about extending the Dash line down to Target is really part of a larger issue as we see it. The state, the county, and the city are all desperately, almost to the point of coercion, urging us to eschew our automobiles and use public transportation. In our particular area, which are what used to be called middle-class tract homes and some condominiums and townhouses, the demographics are changing. People are getting older, but staying in their homes. Younger people are not learning to drive as quickly and as eagerly as they used to. And the population is increasing on the north end of town with Ponte Vista. I want to just point out to DOT and to Metro and to government in general, it's this kind of perhaps micro demographic change that is going to have to be looked at and begin to be accommodated in order for people to make the transition from solo driving and gas-powered vehicles to public transportation. Fact is, Target's at the bottom of a very long, steep hill, and not many people are going to bicycle up to shopping on Western by way of Capitol Drive or Park Western. I think you folks have to get down in the neighborhoods more and talk to people who use the services, and perhaps you do, and I'm missing something here, but we're in a changing world. The government wants, and the city wants us to change our behavior. Well, they need to work with us to accommodate the changes that we see coming every day. Thank you.
Pat Nave was next.
Thank you. Gentlemen, can you explain to us briefly how it is you make decisions about routing of public transportation internally? Am I on mute?
No, you're fine.
Okay, this is Scott from Metro, and yeah, one of the reasons for doing a restructuring study that both LA and Metro took up was, you know, to get those kind of third-party observations of what we're doing here and making sure that it's the best service that we can put out given the available resources. So there are a lot of trade-offs, obviously, between, for example, coverage and frequency. The more frequency you have, the shorter your wait. But the less coverage you have, you know, you may have a longer walk to and from the bus stop or to and from your destination, your final destination. So those are some of the things we look at. You know, the data that we have on ridership is pretty extensive, and so we know where people are riding the most and where the buses tend to get overcrowded, which hasn't been a problem lately because you know, with the pandemic, we obviously lost some riders. So we have seats available today if any of you are thinking of trying public transportation or you know, doing a mode shift, as Mr. Nave mentioned. It's a good time to do that because there are seats available. So bottom line is, you know, ridership drives it. But you know, there is some consideration for coverage as well. But LA being so large and having, you know, so many areas that need service, you know, it's not like trying to serve New York City or downtown San Francisco or something like that. It's just a huge area. So the objective is that nobody would have to walk more than a half a mile to get to a bus stop. And so those are some of the factors that we look at Metro when doing route planning. And I'll let LA add a little bit more if you want, Kay.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, definitely. Probably one of the biggest factors we look at is ridership, and you know, we let the data kind of guide us on where we think transit service should go. And you know, among other things, like we take a look at census data, like there's data sets available like households without cars, and you know, we know where people live that are most likely to take transit, and you know, things like that. So just echoing what Scott said, like ridership is an important factor, but you know, we also take a look at, you know, some other demographic things when making these decisions.
Follow-up question, please.
Go ahead.
It's, you know, I'm just envisioning a room full of people, and it sounds like the squeaky wheel in that room gets the most grease. I mean, Caltrans has a kind of a prescribed way of deciding where to put stoplights, for example, and other things. Do you guys have any system for deciding it? I mean, you can't do it on ridership if you're trying to decide whether to put a bus line between Target and Western, because there's no riders there, because there's no buses. I mean, what do you do if somebody comes in with a request for a bus line? How do you decide whether to do it? Do you have a manual? Do you have anything that somebody can come in, or is it a case that when somebody retires, all the knowledge goes out the door with them?
Yeah, I mean, this is Scott with Metro. We have, service standards, like I mentioned, the half mile, maximum walk to a bus stop. And those are service standards that, we review from time to time. But I wanted to point out, some of the demographics that Kay was getting at too. Obviously density drives ridership. And so does things like, household income and number of cars you have available in your house. So obviously, ridership's going to be stronger in the areas that are lower income. And so that's, some of the demographics that we look at. Obviously, if you had a senior center at the Target or something like that, it might make it more of an attractive destination for the Dash. Metro already goes there, as you know. But the San Pedro area in general, it's not necessarily high income, but it's not necessarily low income either. And a lot of people have cars. So to be honest with you, there's a lot of competition there, to get riders, because a lot of people use their cars and are dependent on their cars. And I hear you, what you're saying is, how can we judge the ridership when there's nothing to evaluate on Capitol Drive or on Park Western? But from past experience, we know that a lot of the people in San Pedro are going to continue to drive their cars, and putting out new services and new extensions, at least in San Pedro during these economic times, will probably not get the ridership response that we would be looking for.
Cindy, did you have a question?
I
Welcome.
did. Thank you. Can I ask a question about the 950?
Yes.
Okay, the Silver Line. So right before the pandemic, I was working at a firm in downtown Los Angeles, and the 950 was awesome because it stopped in front of my apartment, and it literally kind of almost stopped right in front of my work. So that was really helpful because the company decided to not pay for our parking anymore. And therefore we're offering, to pay for public transportation. So my question is, when the 950 leaves San Pedro, it seems to stop too many times, because by the time we got to South LA, that area, it just got so crowded. There were so many people waiting for for the buses. And it was just awful being on the bus. So is there any way to stop less, or I don't know, put more buses from South Central to downtown or something? Because that was just unbearable, being all squashed up like sardines in a can.
Okay. Well, thank you for riding. And I appreciate you relating your story about the 950. We have had to add service to the 950 over the years, not during the pandemic, but such that it was running every 20 minutes, I believe, in the AM peak and the PM peak, and then every 30 minutes at other times. It's still doing that. We're going to continue those service levels. The number of stops, we've experimented with that as well over the years. And when the 950 first started, or it used to be the 450, you may remember, it skipped some of the stations on the Harbor Transitway, like the Manchester station and the Slauson station. What we found was that the other buses were getting too crowded. The 910 buses that did serve those stops were getting too crowded. And so we had to put the 950 in service at Manchester and Slauson and Rosecrans as well, which did slow down the service a little bit, but helped to even out the loads so that the 910 wasn't so great. It's been a very successful route, and carrying 14,000 riders a day, I believe, even today during the pandemic. So it's running every 5 minutes. That Silver Line is combined between the 910 and the 950.
Yeah, but it doesn't run every 5 minutes from here, San Pedro.
Yes, San Pedro, and like I said, it gets the 20-minute service in the AM and PM peaks.
Well, this was 2019. I think it was more like every 30, almost 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, we had to add trips even in the 5 a.m. hour northbound out of San Pedro because of rider demand, and I believe that schedule is still intact today. So yeah, the Silver Line has been a real success story.
Yeah, thank you for having it. It would be really nice if we didn't have to stop halfway and, you know, just keep going and call it an express.
Yeah. Yes, that was something we all commented on when they wanted to make the change. Jennifer, did you have a question or comment?
I just actually have two questions, and thank you for allowing me to do it. Just with the impending development, et cetera, and the slew of anticipated commuters coming to San Pedro, is that going to impact any kind of public transit towards us and out of our city? How is that going to affect just the neighborhood in general? And two, my other question is kind of more of an economic question. You said, yeah, San Pedro is a kind of flux of incomes with the current inflation and gas prices and our impending changing over to electricity powered machines. Is that going to drive up the prices for our commuters in our San Pedro area that are, you know, struggling every day today? And how much of an impact is that going? So how is these two very relevant situations being looked at for our near future, current future, and as this development takes place, how are we going to adjust to all of this influx of commuters into our town area?
Yeah, those are good questions. And you know, we will be monitoring the loads on the metro lines and on the dash, and you know, working with LA Dot going forward to make sure that this new transit network serves the needs of San Pedro. I think as far as the future goes, you know, we all hope that there's a boom and that there are more riders to carry, and we will respond accordingly, you know, to increase the service levels as needed. But we typically don't do that before we see evidence of that demand. So, you know, I can't tell you that we're putting out 15-minute service on all of our routes by, you know, 2025, because we need to wait and see how that plays out.
And cost inflation, is that something that we can look forward to in raising prices for transit, or as
Yeah.
we move towards all of that, or
Yeah,
is it something we're looking at?
well, you mentioned, yeah, for sure. We're looking at the economy all the time. You mentioned electrification and the cost of that. It's certainly going to be expensive. We are converting our bus fleet as well to electric buses, and the Silver Line will be probably the first route in the South Bay area to be converted to electric buses. But you know, it's a lot of work electrifying our division, our bus yard, and charging the buses overnight and charging them at the Harbor Gateway Transit Center or en route. So we're making a huge investment in that. Our fares will remain low. So it should be a more attractive option over time as the cost of driving increase.
Yeah, and hi, this is Kay again. You know, I just want to add that Dash is still free. So, you know, we definitely recognize that transit is something that's taken by, you know, people who, you know, may not be able to afford a car, or, you know, or have only one car in their household or things like that. So, and I believe Metro is also rolling out fare capping, right, Scott? So, you know, there's definitely like recognition that, you know, transit should be like a public good. And, you know, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, I don't see our agencies kind of passing, you know, the cost onto its riders, even though we are also expanding our, you know, infrastructure and things like that.
Thank you. I have one question, which has to do with the route 205. When you showed it, you said it was going to go do that little turnaround loop, but it wasn't going to stop. Well, that turnaround loop goes right through San Pedro, or through the edge of Rancho San Pedro. And it seemed to me it would make sense to have a stop or two in there. So I'm wondering why there are no stops in there.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. We usually don't stop on turnaround loops unless there are existing stops, and we'll take a look at it. We are going in only one direction there, and we're making left turns, so it's hard to stop before a left turn because the bus usually has to get over to a turning lane. But we can look at that and see. That's a good point. Maybe on Center Street there might be a stop we can serve. I don't recall, but I'll look into it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I do see a couple of hands. I don't know if they're just weren't taken down or if they have additional questions. Elise, did you have another question?
I would just love to get some brochures at the chamber on the changes, so we can help with outreach.
Okay, thank you, Elise. I'll definitely send some or drop some off. You're still on is it 6th Street or 7th Street?
We're on 7th, 390 West 7th.
Okay,
Thank you
got it.
so much.
And it seems to me that if we had electronic versions of the schedules, we could post them on our websites for the 3 neighborhood councils. Might be a nice service for us to do for the community.
Yeah, I could send you the PDFs for the 4 metro lines in San Pedro.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think the one map that shows all of the lines, both the dash and I think that one map would be nice to have posted.
Okay.
Pat, did you have something else or did you just not take your hand down?
Oh, I'm back, yeah. Hey, what is the name of the group that decides the bus routes in Los Angeles? Who's in charge of it? How many people work there and who do you report to?
Too many questions.
I'll take them one at a time. What's the name of the group that decides bus routes in the city?
Yeah, you want to take that?
Sure, yeah. So as for Dash, we are part of LADOT Department of Transportation, and then within Department of Transportation, we're in the Transit Bureau. So we run the Dash and Commuter Express buses. And so I guess to answer your question, LADOT, and then specifically the Transit Bureau of LADOT, makes these decisions on where our Dash buses are going to go.
Who's in charge of that division?
That would be Mariana Valdivia. That's our chief of transit.
How many people work in that division?
I want to say around 40 people, 50 people.
And who do they report to?
And then, all of us report to our general manager. And then our general manager, we answer to the city council districts and also to the mayor.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. Did Rock leave? There you go. There's
Here,
Rock.
I'm here.
Yeah, you know what, Rock? Let's let Jason say one thing and then we're gonna move to, you were supposed to be giving a report on the open house that you went to.
The open house I went to?
They call it an open house.
I didn't go to that open house.
You didn't go to it. Well, then you can't give a report, can you?
No, I can't.
You have an emergency and you have to leave. Did you have a question or was that just why you're?
No, I was just trying to clear that up because I
Yeah.
saw that and I
Yeah,
meant
you volunteered to go and give a report, but
I have to be somewhere I'm being asked to right now, so I apologize.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll
See you tomorrow.
We'll move on to Jason then. Jason, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I had a question about, you mentioned the maps being updated and things like this. Do you not have an app for a smartphone that has all these routes in it and you can do route planning?
Yes, we recommend the Transit app for route planning, and it gives you real-time bus arrivals. So, when you open it up, it knows where you are based on your GPS, tells you where the closest bus stops are and what time the bus is going to be there. So you get all the information you need on that Transit app.
So will that Transit app show future changes such as this when it's going to be effective? So a commuter could look at the app and say, oh, well, next week I have to change my planning to get to my bus because the routes are changing.
Yes, if you plan a trip for, say, December 12th, so these changes are going to take effect December 11th. And let's say the week before you want to plan your trip, it'll do that as long as you put in a day after December 11th.
Okay, well, that's handier than printing out maps stuck on websites. I think
Yes,
if nothing else, we should put a QR code or something to this app on maybe our one of our web pages, so people can just find this thing quickly.
Can you figure out how to do that for us, Jason? You know, I can't do that.
Well, take a note for me to do it, and then I'll do it.
Thank you, Jason.
That's all I have. Thanks.
With that, I don't think we have any other questions. So we'll thank you both for your presentation and also for listening to some of the concerns that you can tell that we have. And I think that staying in touch as we see a lot of changes in San Pedro that may drive or affect the ridership, with the Ponte Vista getting built out, all of the development in downtown San Pedro, Alta Sea, and West Harbor, some of those, and the changes at Rancho San Pedro that are going to basically double or triple the population there. So we're seeing a lot that may affect transit as we go forward. But thank you.
thank you, Diana. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Our next item was to be a report. Oh, and I said by Cynthia. Oh, I made a mistake. It was Ziggy. You were the one that was going to go. You and Rock were going to go to the mixed use overlay virtual open house. Did you go to that, Ziggy?
No, I'm sorry. I had just come back from Croatia and I
Okay.
forgot. Sorry.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about it. Then the next item is a report on the RPV City Council meeting on the Western Avenue projects, which I attended. And that they had a meeting that had several reports that were related to Western Avenue. The first one had to do with traffic. They are planning to make signal hardware improvements and are working towards finally synchronizing the lights between Caltrans and the city of LA. They're still working on it, but at least they're trying to make progress. I think they're making progress. They also plan to add some additional left turn pockets and a right turn lane at Westmont and Delisande. In preparation for all of this, they're doing a traffic study to look at what is the increased flow of traffic due to all the construction, that both what's going on now on Western, but what may result from this mixed use overlay plan that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So they're going to be doing that traffic study and expect to have that traffic study by September of 2023. And then after that, they will design the changes to Western and expect the design in September of 2024, and then the construction being done in 2025 and 2026, which sounds so far away, but I know how these things go. They happen faster than we thought. Their second topic was beautification of Western, and they are developing some concept plans for the beautification. And then they expect to have the concept plans in May of 2023, design in August, and construction to start in January of 2024. They're talking about low water, drought tolerant plants, possibly planters, I'm not sure where, landscaping, uplighting, trash cans, and benches were some of the things they mentioned. The third topic was economic and community development, and this relates to the overlay zone that had that the open house was for. Did anyone attend that? The two people that thought they were going didn't. Did anyone else go? Okay, so we talked about this once before. They want to amend their building code to give more flexibility and make it easier for development along Western. The things that they're looking at are reduced setbacks, reduced parking, reduced open space requirements, a streamlined environmental process, and this was really interesting, publicly funded infrastructure. Are you listening, Pat Nave? Such as undergrounding utilities that the city would actually pay for, not the developer. I thought that was very interesting. They are currently conducting a community survey about their proposed mixed-use overlay district. And you can actually take that survey. I sent out the information with the link. If you didn't get it, let me know and I can resend it. You might find it very interesting. Actually, the link to the survey can be found at rpvca.gov/mixed use. And the link to it is also in our agenda packet for tonight. They anticipate having a draft ordinance in early 2023 and adopting it in late 2023. You know, they're doing this to meet that housing, the RENA housing numbers. Interestingly, and it's unfortunate that Mark left because he keeps asking about this. The owners of the center on Western that has the O'Reilly store in it applied to the city of RPV to revitalize that area. That application is currently under review. However, their planning department would like to see them intensify their plans and possibly add a second story. They noted that the depth of the lot and the height limitations are challenges. Unlike Los Angeles, RPV has a view ordinance, which restricts how tall the buildings can be. So those are the three things that they are talking about on Western Avenue. And not only is there this mixed use that'll be on the RPV side, but most likely when the city finishes its plans, there will also be mixed use on the city of LA side. So any questions or comments?
No, thank you for the report.
You're welcome. I'm going to, Mike isn't here yet. He had something, thought he could be here by about 7, but I don't see him yet. So I'm going to skip down to updates on other items of interest to the committee. You've probably already heard West Harbor will be celebrating its groundbreaking with a community event on Saturday, November 12th from 10:30 to 3:30. So finally, we're going to see something happen at West Harbor. They finally will be signing the agreement with the port, which means they've got their financing in order. Craig, I'm sorry, I just saw your hand.
Yeah, I was just commenting that those plans sound like it's going to make Western impassable and overly developed. It seems like a pattern on a PV to push everything out that they have to do on Western because it doesn't impact them on PV Drive North where it's impassable at certain hours. But and we should
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think we should all be looking at putting a lot of pressure on RPV and our own city for Western is, I don't have to go up on Western, so it's not bad, but I know a lot of people that do. And a lot of what we've been talking about, the buses aren't going to alleviate anything. There's no real buses going on Western. So what is?
Yeah. And I think one of the things we'll want to do is first of all, I think everyone should take their survey. And second of all, we should all look very closely when they come out with the initial plans and be prepared to comment on them. But you're absolutely right, Craig, in terms of where they are choosing to locate additional housing, the majority of it is on Western Avenue. Okay, other items of interest to the committee. Last week was the groundbreaking for the Piazza, the plaza down there. They're now calling it Piazza Miramonte. So we will see what we will see will happen. Linda's shaking her head because it was very strange. I checked the status of a number of projects and found there were active permits under consideration by Building and Safety for the 511 South Harbor, which is the grinder. So they're working hard to start construction. The Boutique Hotel seems to be moving along with their permits, and the self-storage on North Gaffey. Those three all seem to be moving on their permits. The Starbucks that's proposed on Northwestern They're still negotiating with the property owner. They're going to need to do a traffic study, and they anticipate that it'll be at least 2 months before that's done. So in about 2 months' time, we may hear something more from Starbucks. Lori Jacobs asked the committee to look at Council File 22-1058, which would allow shelters for the homeless to be built outside of the current zoning designations. It was too late for this agenda, and we're not going to discuss it tonight because it's not on the agenda, but I did send out a copy of the motion, and I included a copy in the agenda packet. I would encourage everyone to look at it. It was set to be acted on by City Council today. I anticipate they probably passed it. What the motion did, though, was it asked for a 45-day report back on possible changes to the admin code. So that's what we're probably going to be wanting to look at, is what are they proposing to change? If you look at the council file, it's interesting because there's a number of neighborhood councils that have filed community impact statements, some of them in support and some of them in opposition. And it's interesting to read their reasoning. So we may want to start thinking about what kind of changes are acceptable to help get more affordable housing, and which ones would not be acceptable to us. Does anyone have any other updates? In fact, I'm going to ask Elise. Elise, is there any update on the cultural center?
We are waiting to begin negotiations with General Services. We're just, they may want to push it past the election date with the new council office, but we're hoping to start sooner than that.
Well, election's not very far off, so.
That's correct. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're hoping to hear back from General Services soon.
Robin, what about the two projects on Pacific? What's happening with those two?
They're in litigation, and that's all I know on the status.
They're both in litigation?
Yeah.
The,
I had a question. What is the council file you mentioned a minute ago? 22 dash. I wrote it down wrong.
22-1058.
Are you sure? I just went to that and it didn't look right.
Didn't look right. I'll tell you, there's a copy of it in tonight's agenda packet. So,
Okay. All right. I'll check there.
I mean, I may have made a typo when I wrote that down. It wouldn't be the first time I made a typo. Actually, yeah, no, I don't have a copy of it with me. Okay. We've still not been joined by Mike Galvin, who's going to give, it's really an interesting presentation, because what he does is he lays out all of the things that are going on the waterfront in one presentation. Ziggy, do you have something?
Yes, I was just wondering, since Gaffey Street has gotten some beautification done and Western seems to be getting some beautification, when is Pacific gonna get some beautification done? Because it really needs it.
Yeah, the far north part, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. That's part of the ports beautification project that is, they actually just signed, I believe they just approved the contract for that beautification. But you're talking about the rest of
From like, yeah, from like First Street or O'Farrell to 6th Street.
Yeah.
It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, there's no plans that I know of for that, and maybe you need to get together with some people and come up with some.
Okay.
Adele?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Regarding the blighted areas on Pacific, some of which are in the coastal area, some of which are in the central area, it really has gotten bad. I don't know how many people drive down there regularly, but it's beyond anything that should be in San Pedro. But I do have a question for Robin about the two lawsuits on the big projects, mixed-use projects on Pacific. I'm wondering who filed those lawsuits? Is it a private people or attorneys that, are specializing in protesting or throwing up roadblocks for any projects to be built?
It's adjacent residents.
Adjacent residents to, and who's funding that?
That I don't know anything about that.
Do you know the attorneys involved? Who filed?
I know the name of the attorney, but I don't know if it's my place to be even talking about these lawsuits.
Well, I'm just curious of, we do have such a blighted area for everybody who lives here and drives by there every day. You know, are these loss attorneys pro bono just because they don't want any development? I mean, I think that we really should be entitled to know what's going on, that we don't have to look at those horrible, horrible empty lots where, of course, the homeless and who knows what else gather.
I know the neighbors recently complained about that, and I think there was some action. I mean,
It's
like
been ever since we had some verbal altercation with the builder, ever since they stopped immediately doing anything to keep up appearances. Nothing is done. And I think it's a terrible fire hazard also. So it's distressing, and I'm happy to join whoever wants to do something, get a campaign. And I was hoping Elise would be hearing, because I did mean to email her about the condition.
So I want to give a huge shout out to Mona Sutton and the CPR cleanup crew. If you watch on Facebook, she's got a large group of volunteers. They're going up and down Pacific. They're meeting with property owners, trying to get cleanup. They're working with Martin Cully, who owns the two properties that are in litigation. And he's really at his wit's end, because he doesn't know, you know, he's not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel right now. And so there's a whole issue there. Mona's been working with him as well as some other community members to try to help him keep it cleaned up. But they need resources, funding, volunteers. And Diana, I can send a link to everybody. I mean, Mona and her team are working hard, and they're painting. They just painted out at the library today. So it's a huge effort underway, and they would love help.
I think cleanup is wonderful and will maybe help a little bit, but we're just talking about dilapidated, blighted properties that I don't know what the intention of the landlord is, but unless they have those metal grates up, I understand that the homeless are living there. And, you know, who wouldn't want to live in some structure rather than sleeping on the street?
You're correct. It is an ongoing battle that the property owners are facing. If you email me an address, you know, I can see what the status is. I know Trammelled Crow at the grinder, they're out there all the time, reboarding, securing the roof, because it's a daily occurrence of people breaking in.
But they're maintaining it. The builder of the two properties,
correct,
he gave up. In the beginning, there was a little weed clearance, those palm trees with the fronds dead. I mean, it is if we have those winds, those hot, dry winds, the neighbors are really going to be unhappy. It's just a terrible situation.
Right. It is a terrible situation. There's people on this call that have much more detail than they want to talk about. And, but Mona's in regular conversation with him. I think she was calling him today, and I'll send Diana a statement after we talk to him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Sorry, I just didn't get to my button. Thank you. I wanted to let you know that yesterday I actually walked from 7th Street all the way to 19th on Pacific, and I was very aghast by the situation of it. I personally am helping with Barbara St. John of the outreach of the San Pedro community, you know, our San Pedro neighborhood council. She wants to do an alley beautification project and things like that. And I'm helping her on the ground root level, whatever I can do to help clean up our lovely, lovely town and neighborhood. I'm willing to do it. It is overwhelming. That street was very heartbreaking to walk on. Just to and the pavement itself, I nearly twisted my ankle twice. because somebody was in front of me and I didn't look down to where like a tree had been removed and it hadn't been covered up or what have you.
Pat, excuse me, Pat, can you call Mike Galvin and see what's happened here?
Yeah, well, he hasn't shown up.
Yeah, he should have been here by now.
I'll call him.
Yeah, talk to him this way. This way, mute yourself first, okay?
What?
I'll mute you. Never mind. James, did you have your hand up? James?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Adele, those two properties on Pacific is the same landowner at 1309, the old Dancing Water Club, and look, it's the same style. He just lets those things. And I think the city should come in, clean up the properties and bill them. And for 22nd Street and Pacific. As far as all the palm trees Diana was alluding to, I've been trying to work with the county because he's just going to mow them down, and they've shown some interest, Janice Hahn's office, to relocate those trees, maybe down at the port or something like that. There's a lot of palm trees and they're definitely healthy and could be cleaned up. They just look like trash because they haven't been pruned or anything like that with the dead fronds. Yeah, and thank you.
Thank you. Doug Epperhart.
Yeah, I don't know if you have this on the agenda or you were going to talk about it at all, but Monday evening we had a presentation a little bit of a presentation from SWA on the connectivity plan.
Oh, good. Tell us.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Yeah, it was very, very brief, but they have a timeline now for developing a plan between now, basically, and summer of next year. They're talking about at least 2 regular public meetings to take input and present the plan, I guess. They ran through a number of things in terms of their goals and whatnot, and I should probably go find my notes here, but they're looking at moving folks to and from the waterfront in terms of motorized transportation, bus and or bicycle and pedestrian transportation, wayfaring in particular, signage. And one of the things that I think we should be concerned about as we go through this process is to make sure that they talk to as many groups as possible, because I had pointed out that there are folks not only exterior or outside of the port, such as Metro and Dash, who are now going to reconfigure bus lines, but also even groups that operate on port property like Rec and Parks, and their most recently changed parking and drive-through situation at Cabrillo Beach, which could potentially affect connectivity plans. And they had asked us if we would come up with lists of folks and entities that they should be talking to that they might not be thinking of.
Oh.
For example, I mentioned all kinds of, like neighborhood watches, resident associations, but it sounds to me, and I don't want to characterize this too much, but essentially what the port is seeking from this kind of connectivity plan is moving basically tourists from outside our area to places like West Harbor and Outer Harbor Cruise Ship Terminal and so on and so forth. And they're really not, let us say, focusing on the community, the folks that live in and around San Pedro. And so,
Doug, just a moment. I want to let Pat know that Mike is on now.
Okay, well, I'm almost done. But I was just going to say, for us in particular, neighborhood councils and chamber and whatnot, we really want to make sure that the connectivity plan addresses connectivity to the folks who live here.
Right.
So that's my quick take on it. And I don't know, did you guys get the presentation I think Augie sent out the PowerPoint today.
Oh, I didn't. I was
Okay,
hoping you would Send it to me.
all right, we can forward it.
I'll send it out to the committee.
Sure.
I saw it. Diana, you got it on your computer, but it,
Oh,
it
I've
looks
got
like it looks like they're using the president's meeting as their connectivity committee. Okay, Mike Alvin's got his hand up.
Right, and I just promoted him to a co-host. And now that he's here, we will move to that item, which is.
Can I ask, can I respond to what Doug just said? Because I don't think we have that entirely straight in regards to what the connectivity plan is trying to do.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Yes. Please
Yeah.
do.
So the connectivity plan is trying to do both things. It is trying to connect the community with the waterfront. It's clearly delineated that the focus is on the waterfront, but the waterfront by itself needs connection, but it also needs connection with the community. So that is a critical point of it. I don't know if that got lost in the very brief presentation that was provided earlier this week at the neighborhood council and chamber presidents meeting, but that's not the intent. It is balanced both on bringing people into the waterfront from outside the region, but just as important or more so, connecting the waterfront with the communities that exist adjacent to it. So that is a critical component. I just want to make that clear that there's no intent to de-emphasize that. Although the delineation around the waterfront is clear and focused, and that it has to focus on that because that's a nexus issue with money that we spend at the port. So that just want to make sure that is understood completely.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to move to your presentation.
Okay, let me see if this is it.
We don't see a picture. Ah, yes, there we go.
We see it now, right? Let me get to the.
Wonderful. So Mike Alvin, everyone.
So for those of you that don't know me, I am the Director of Waterfront Commercial Real Estate with the Port of LA. And in that capacity, I'm responsible for redevelopment of the LA waterfront, which includes a lot of infrastructure that we're building down on the waterfront to connect the dots, which means connect all the potential development sites and existing developments that exist along the waterfront with readying them through infrastructure development through the public access investment plan, and then also attracting private developers to come in to the waterfront area and spend private money and bolster what the port has provided. So I'm just going to go through where we're at with different projects and what opportunities are upcoming. The biggest project we've been working on for the last 10 years has been what's now called the West Harbor Project, which is the full redevelopment of the Ports of Call area by a joint venture between the Rakovich Company and Jericho Development, which is a local developer in San Pedro. West Harbor's planning on building out in their first phase about 180,000 square feet of finished space, and there'll be a pretty large open space area that connects downtown, the town square, and the promenade that is about 75% built along the water's edge. So this is a depiction of what West Harbor will look like going forward, with the promenade completely finished and their buildings just adjacent to that, but really with the intent of opening up the water's edge, creating these large amenity decks that are over the water. These are existing decks that exist there where former restaurants were. And this project is really important because hopefully when they close financing in the next week or so, we expect this is going to be the largest private investment along the water's edge that we've ever seen. Over $160 million coming from a private developer, of which $150 million or so is financed, which is an amazing situation for us to set that precedent and create an opportunity where we have entered into a lease that is actually financeable with large scale institutional lenders. So a great opportunity to set precedent and really the jewel of our waterfront going forward. So I'm just going to buzz through some of this, what it looks like. I think a lot of you have probably seen some of this. Built in 3 phases within the first phase, phase 1A, 1B, 1C. 1A and 1B are about 75% leased already. And then they have some leases that have already been signed in the North Park area, which is that open space area that's going to connect the town square and the built out denser development. These are a lot of the main tenants that they have. Some of these had been announced some time ago, including Mike Hess Brewing, Sugar Factory, Hopscotch, Yamashiro. Those were some of the first that came in. And then others, Kings and Queens were one of the first ones that came in as well. And then others have filled in between. Like I said, about 70 to 75% leased out in the first two phases, which is what they're going for financing for right now. And that, like I said, that's expected to close in the next week or so, with the ground opening that's going to happen on the 12th of November. And that's going to be a big community event starting at 10:30. That will start with speeches, and then we'll just have an open waterfront festival for the rest of the afternoon. So these are all of the leases that they have. And like you can see, 77% for the first phase 1A, 1B, 61%. They've leased some in North Park as well. And then other phases include the amphitheater, container kitchen, and additional parking that they're planning on developing. So some pictures just to see different viewpoints looking down the waterfront. You know, as you can see, it's very much open, which is extremely important versus what we have had along the water's edge, which is where you had to go into a restaurant and then you would see the water. Here, you can walk along the water's edge no matter if you're going to a restaurant or not. This is the North Park area. That's more of an open, expansive area, less built out buildings, but important to create that open space. One of the tenants in here is called Bark Social, which is basically a dog park that has food and beverage and television. So it's sort of like, you know, the mix between a sports bar outside and a dog park. So pretty cool opportunity there. Another one that they're working on here, Pig and Pickle, which is a large scale pickleball court that has food and beverage attached to it as well. Altasea, I think many of you know about this. Another project we've been working on for about 10 years. We expect to see shovels in the ground here in the next couple months as they start the electrical build out, as well as building out the solar panels that will go on 180,000 square feet of warehouse space. Then the next phase is to start probably January, February, which is to start with the construction of adaptive reuse on the 180,000 square feet, berth 58 through 60. And some of these pictures show what that will look like in an active working wharf out there, as different types of research vessels and commercial vessels come up to utilize this area. Moving on, just west of there to Cabrillo Way Marina. Cabrillo Way Marina had gone out for redevelopment. I believe we did an RFP back in 2018. And we have a developer there that has signed a term sheet to move forward with the development. The CEQA is in process right now. That could be done probably in the next 6 to 9 months. And then we would move forward with actually selling the marina assets to the developer. They would enter into a long-term ground lease for that marina, and then a development on the land side that includes retail, dining, entertainment, as well as hotels. 2 hotel buildings are proposed for that site. And the site also includes the parking lot that's on the corner of 22nd Street and what was Minor before. So you can see that down here in this area. There's a hotel planned for that, and then you see the hotel that is planned out in this area, closer to where the marina is. There's also a marina club building back here that will serve as sort of a general marina amenity. So if you are a slip renter in the marina, you have access to the marina club as well. There'll be public access to some amenities there at the same time. And then you have some more retail and restaurants down here closer to 22nd Street. So just different ideas about what that looks like. Same developer, except for it's not a joint venture that, and I didn't mention this, but the developer at the marina side is Cabrillo Way Partners, which includes Bellwether Financial Group and R.D. Olson Hotel Developers. So that's a joint venture between them two. Bellwether is owns Bellingham Marine, which is one of the largest marina contractors in the world. And they are, Bellwether Financial is also the developer for this boatyard facility that's really important in really amenitizing the waterfront and bringing in the ability to service boats. Up to 99% of the boats that are registered in the state of California will be serviceable here. And that's critical because of changing regulations and the cost of doing business in this sector. Many smaller boatyards have been taken out of business, and there are really no large scale boatyards in between the state of Washington and San Diego. So if you have a big boat, you have to go really far to get it out of the water, or you have to wait in a very long line when you get there too. So this will provide some additional market capacity there, both for recreational boats and for commercial vessels, which is critical in a port the size of LA and Long Beach. Just moving on to Wilmington, a lot of work going on there, really laying the groundwork for the waterfront and future development there along Harry Bridges and Avalon, which is our key focus. So the Wilmington Waterfront Promenade should open in the spring of 2023. So we're really looking forward to that. That's been a project that's been going on for about 2 years now. It's a total 2.5-year project. And that's going to really recreate the waterfront, and the historic waterfront in Wilmington, and give a lot more opportunity to Banning's Landing, which has existed there by itself for about the last 20 years. Then the Avalon Pedestrian Bridge project will connect that back into the Avalon Promenade Gateway project and push it all the way up to Avalon, reconnecting the waterfront with the historic commercial gateway in Wilmington, and reinvigorating that first block of Avalon there and allowing for some private development to happen there. And this has all been made possible with a long-going negotiation through the Port and LADWP, which came to a conclusion on a property swap some time ago, I think about 5 years ago. And we've been moving forward based on that property swap, where we have given up certain property to them to allow for the tank property, or the large tank on the east side, to come down and allow us to connect the waterfront. So this is the waterfront promenade that will be built, that is almost built now, that will open in May of 2023. And this includes about a 4-acre event park up on top there that is elevated up from the water's edge, a promenade along the water that connects Banning's Landing and goes across to a commercial dock adjacent to Banning's Landing, a picnic pier in this area, a child's playground area right here. This is the event park up on top here. Future connection here to the bridge that will be going, that goes across and will be going through that tank that is no longer existing. And then the Wilmington Youth Sailing Center that will be built out over here on this side. So this is a picture from quite some time ago, actually, almost a year ago. So you can see the berm building up there. The site looks very different today and will look very different in about 5 months when it's finished. But these are just some construction pictures to show what's been going on there. And the big buildup there is really to connect this bridge and then take this into the Avalon Promenade and Gateway project, which is another elevated park that will then come down into the Avalon corridor area. So you can see where that is there, where that tank was before and is no longer, and the park that will be built there once the bridge is built. Other development opportunities we're working on include Warehouse 1. We're going to be putting out a request for information. These are old numbers. I wish it went out in April 2022, but it did not. I'm sorry, I need to correct that. So it's going to go out probably January of 2023. So we've been working on that, working with state lands on that. We need a lot of flexibility for future uses there at Warehouse 1. The Outer Harbor Cruise Terminal, we're going to try to put a draft RFP out for that, and that's going to include both Outer Harbor and Inner Harbor Cruise Terminals as one development proposal. That will be going out as a draft RFP to industry and the community mid-November this year. In the Wilmington Marinas, we've been working on a feasibility study for that for the last year, and we're hoping to have that completed soon. It was supposed to be completed early summer, but should probably be completed by October, November this year. And that's all I have to share, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody may have about any of our development projects or any of our plans going forward.
Boy, do I see hands. I'm gonna start with Chuck Hart.
Thank you. What's the status of the Wilmington Sailing Center?
The Wilmington Youth Sailing Center, the port has been in negotiations with the operator there for a scope of work for some period of time. And so we really need to land that issue. And but we have it ready to fund and ready to finalize the design on it. Just a matter of getting concurrence on the scope of work. So we've added quite a bit of money to that from the original allocation. I think the total project is, in between $8 and $9 million. The original allocation was in the $3 million range. So we're committed to making that happen, and we want to get it up and running as soon as possible, given the waterfront development that we're doing adjacent to that.
I have one additional question. Where is the boatyard repair in San Pedro? Where's that located on the map? Can you show me?
That is at berth 46. Yeah. I mean berth 44. Let me bring my screen back up and I'll show you. It's right here, actually. It's where San Pedro Boat Works used to be.
Oh, okay.
In
Thank
that
you.
area. This is where the new Outer Harbor Cruise Terminal will be, and that's there. And then adjacent to that is the marina.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan Dixon is next.
Thank you, Diana. After decades of waiting for this project to come to fruition, it seems as if San Pedro is going to be graced with a very nice food court and not much else. I know there are other amenities planned. I don't see a real invitation to families to use this place. That's mostly restaurants. Your renderings optimistically show carrying parents hand in hand with their children. I hope that's the case, but I'm not sure what those kids are going to do. Is there, in the North Park area, is there any consideration of playground equipment or picnic tables, or so you don't have to eat at the restaurants? Is there any way for an average family to enjoy this beautiful new waterfront facility, which supposedly belongs to everyone? And have the groups that have been working on this taken into any consideration the gigantic shift in the audience you are appealing to as this new development comes online?
There will be open space there in that North Park area that includes children play area as well. So that is the expectation, that there will be an opening for that. So there is expected to be multiple offerings there, as I mentioned, recreational, dog park, things that are family oriented for sure, beyond just restaurants. You made it clear that it is a high percentage restaurant that is the business that can actually get the development going, because historically that has been the biggest producer on the site. There is going to be an entertainment facility there, an amphitheater that's going through CEQA right now. So there will be a variety of different things, including a plan to move the USS Iowa down into the SP slip to include more amenities closer in where there's better parking than what the USS Iowa has right now. I guess I don't understand the shift that you mentioned in the visitorship. I'm trying to understand that part.
You used to not be able to get off the freeway because of families coming from South Los Angeles and other areas, probably out to the Inland Empire, coming to just simply experience the waterfront and frankly eat at the fish market. Well, if the fish market still exists, it's been pushed to the north end. And this is a beautiful modern facility. It's not the ramshackle, lovable old ports of call that went downhill over time here, but it's going to be an adjustment for people who are used to coming to ports of call or the waterfront to enjoy a family experience. That's all. Thank you.
The fish market, as you mentioned, will be transitioning to a different site near the cruise terminal. That is what we are in negotiations with them for. So they will not be on that site anywhere. They were not able to come to terms with the developer there, unfortunately. But we want to maintain them within the waterfront. That's important. The reason the traffic was backed up was yes, due to the popularity, but also due to traffic issues related to inefficient street systems that have been changed, because the fish market is still there and you don't see that backup anymore, which is because the street has changed, and the intersection that used to bottleneck because there was a left-hand turn to get into Ports of Call no longer exists. You just drive straight into Ports of Call. So that is the reason. The visitorship has not changed because I see the gross receipt numbers every month, and that has not changed a lot, but the traffic circulation has, and that's why we built the new interchange there where Sampson Way and Harbor used to be, and now Harbor just drives directly into the Ports of Call area. So that has mitigated a lot of those traffic issues. But I do believe that the developer intends to capture all the existing business and new business as well. That is their intent. So the expectation is that there will be something for everybody there, and that more people than visit today will be visiting in the future. That is the hope and the expectation.
Thank you.
I'm gonna call Lamar Lyons next. Welcome, Lamar.
Thank you. I have three questions. The developer, does he have total authority to give out all leases with no impact from the port?
Yes, they have authority. I mean, there are certain restrictions around what they can do, but for the most part, they are able to lease at will, because that's what you want them to be able to do.
The small businesses that were eliminated at Ports of Call, it seems like none of them are returning. Is that the case?
They are not returning, none that I know of except for Harbor Breeze, which is the existing harbor cruise operator there will be the master developer of the water side. So that has been an existing tenant for some time at the Ports of Call site, but other smaller tenants, I'm not aware that any of them are returning.
Was that a condition that you placed on the developer, the port, or did the port just allow for the non-inclusion of any of the small players?
Like I said, the port doesn't have a lot of control over the developer's leasing activities. The developer is allowed to lease as they wish. The port definitely encouraged the developer to incorporate any tenants from the existing Ports of Call to remain if they could make a business deal with them. I know they did try really hard to make a business deal with the San Pedro fish market. I don't know if others engaged in negotiations with them effectively or not, but I do know the San Pedro fish market was in a long negotiation with them that didn't end up panning out. But in no way did the port tell them that you must. It's not a hard requirement to keep some of the smaller tenants, nor did we tell them that they mustn't keep the smaller tenants. So it was up to them. In the end of the day, we did encourage them to incorporate as much as they could. There's been quite a bit of time in between, when some of those tenants were vacating the site to now, and the rents have changed quite a bit. I mean, the rents that are being charged at the site are very, very significant in regards to what was charged previously.
Madam Chair, there's two other questions. If I'd be allowable to ask. The land that is in question, is that not city land?
It's actually state property that the city has in trust.
The Battleship Iowa is being moved to another location, correct?
Well, the decision has not been made, but the Battleship Iowa is interested in moving to a location adjacent to the West Harbor project, and the West Harbor project is also favorable to that move, and that would allow us to utilize the existing cruise terminal at a higher density. And our cruise business has doubled in the last 3 years after COVID. So there's a lot of opportunity for redevelopment there. And there's not a lot of parking for the Iowa as it exists today, because the cruise passengers tend to take all the parking at that location.
Is there not another ship within the footprint?
Within what footprint? The SP Slip footprint?
What I'm talking about I think it's called the Lane.
No, the Lane Victory is out at berth 50, so it's not in the same footprint. No, we're talking about the SP Slip adjacent to West Harbors, where the Iowa would go if we can make that work.
Is the Lane going to be moved?
The Lane was recently moved actually from berth 50 to berth 52. So it's still in the same general location it's been in for several years, but it's still going to be there. We don't have any plans to move it again.
would you accept an invitation to make this presentation to the Central Committee, Central Neighborhood Council?
Of course I would.
Thank you.
Linda Alexander.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the presentation. And by the way, for your calendar, our Central's next board meeting is on the 15th, Tuesday night, the 15th. So we'll be sure to follow that up, or perhaps Lamar will, with a definite confirmation of the invitation.
Yes, please contact Augie on that. I know that
okay.
James Allen has contacted me several times. He invited me to the last meeting, but it was like the day before, and I let him know that we need a little bit more forewarning on that, and that it always needs to be coordinated through Augie because he maintains the schedule on those issues.
Right.
So
We'll
more than
make
happy
sure
to do
that
it though.
we'll make sure Augie's online. I wanted to ask if you could remind me what the request for information is. I've forgotten what that one is.
So that's for Warehouse One. We're doing a little bit different on Warehouse One. We need to really unlock the value there by allowing the state to understand from developers what is necessary there for use to make it all cost effective. If we have too tight of a restraint on what type of uses can go out there within the Tidelands Trust, we could put ourselves in a situation where we're making developers spend money on a RFQ, RFP process with a lot of speculation, not knowing what would or would not be allowed by the state. And so in doing this, it's been done other places in the state, like in the Port of San Francisco, where there are historic assets that need a certain amount of investment to be maintained. The state has shown more flexibility in allowing different types of uses that they maybe otherwise would not allow. So in doing the RFI, we allow private developers and the community to talk to us about what they would like to see out there, what they need to see out there to make the development work financially. Then we can take that back to the state, try to get some firm understanding of what we can offer. And then when we put it out for RFQ, we're making the playing field a lot easier to understand. There's not as much speculation. Then therefore those that are bidding on it are able to take a little bit more risk because they're not just guessing at what the state would like to see. So we're taking a different approach because it's a significant investment there just to bring that building up to where it needs to be habitable. So that's a big part of it and why we're doing it differently versus the cruise terminal. We're going straight to RFP. We know exactly what type of use we want. We know it's a limited pool of potential developers out there that include cruise lines. So we're not going to waste our time going through an RFI or an RFQ and RFP. We're going to put an RFP draft out, make sure that we're in line with where the business is, and then move forward. So it just depends on the development as to what process we go about.
Thank you for that explanation. Appreciate that. And just one last comment. We've been bandying about the word restaurants, but I believe that a number of these will be essentially takeout, and that there will be picnic tables and such in the area. Somewhat more like a food court than standing restaurants. That's my impression, at least.
No, there are areas of the development that are like that, but it's dominated by standing restaurants that have large exclusive indoor and outdoor dining areas. So there are some of those types of uses there in the container kitchen area or within an area that was previously seen as the market hall, which has shrunk a lot because of the demand for restaurants. But no, they're typical restaurants for the most part.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Cecilia Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you. I was curious in the illustrations, it appeared to be rail tracks surrounding the original footprint of Old Port Sakal, New West Harbor. I was wondering what kind of transportation was going to be used to ferry visitors between the West Harbor footprint and the amphitheater / USS Iowa. Should it be moved to that south side of that area? I've followed these meetings with great interest, and moving people is a big thing when the community comes to the coastal, between coastal and central, but they're inflamed about the traffic on Harbor Boulevard. and coming in off the freeway from Gaffey. And also, besides, because we all would like to see the red car come back, but there's been a lot of pushback against it, that it's not a doable thing because it's archaic the way it was laid out. Hope springs eternal sort of thing. I'm not condemning, but we have the red car, the rubber tires, and also I was wondering, besides the rail tracks shown on the illustration and transportation between those two parts of the development, the amphitheater and the West Harbor big green and restaurant areas, will there be transportation also to link the West Harbor development to the Wilmington waterfront area, please? Because I think that would be interesting. It would be fun, whether by land or by boats. Will that be a possibility also, please?
I'll take it backwards. I think the most efficient way to link the two waterfronts is by water. And that is the most interesting way to do it and the most efficient, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of interest in taking any sort of vehicular access, driving by 2 or 3 container terminals, as there would be taking a water taxi or a harbor cruise back and forth. So we expect that those two waterfronts will link by water. And I think that's an attraction in and of itself. On the land side, within the San Pedro district, we expect that to continue to be linked with rubber tire trolley. As you mentioned, the red car is not in service, went out of service because of the lack of usership and the cost to maintain it, on top of the utility of the type of rail that was built there. The type of rail that was built there, the class of rail required significant safety precautions around it, including, guard arms, including pony fences that scattered the waterfront to where the red car was. And so not really your typical hop on, hop off that you would see at, one of the Caruso malls, but something that was a lot more difficult to provide openness, which is in the waterfront. You want to create as much openness as possible and as many or take away as many obstructions as possible. And so that didn't provide that. It wasn't efficient. It was extremely costly on a per user basis as well. And so that was taken out of use. And we've been using the PBID's rubber tire trolley, and it has been working. I think these developers, future cruise developers, they will have other ideas about people movers as well as we get more dense down the waterfront area. And we will see that evolve over time. But for now, we need a very flexible system that is on rubber tires, and that's what we expect to continue to use until this is built out and we have a better idea of where people are moving around. In 10 years, this waterfront is going to look very different, and we're going to see exactly where people want to go to and from. And then maybe it's a point of putting in things that are more rigid. But at this point, we want to be very flexible.
Thank you so much for your answer and all this information. I really appreciate it. I come to these meetings. For me, it's all about learning and to share when people get angry because they may have incorrect information. Thank you so much for a complete answer. I appreciate it. And like many of my neighbors across town, I look forward to what the new developments will bring to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
Craig Goldfarb.
Thank you. I'm looking on this very, very sadly. This is about monetizing San Pedro. The ports of call, we were promised that, well, there would be efforts made to, okay, you can call it West Harbor if you like. There would be efforts made to make local businesses available, places and stuff like that. That was all really not true. Now you're doing everything's bringing in outside contractors. I'm sure you'll have somebody like a developer like the Johnsons fronting it, but we're not going to see anything for San Pedro. I don't hear people talking about what's happening, downtown, that it's going to provide housing for our children, because our children have been told that they can't live here, that there will be no housing for them. And when you're looking at the plans, they're not for people that live here. Everything is plans for people that they plan to bring here. not for the people that are here. They expect us to move out. And nobody wants to talk about it. Or if they're talking about it, they're pretty quiet. But it's sad because I go down to Marina Del Rey, taking a relative to see his doctors, and I went to Westchester High. I took my driver's training around it. There used to be a community there that was really nice, and now we're going to see the same thing. We're going to see warehouses put up that we're told restaurants. We're going to see buildings. We're seeing the whole local character of San Pedro, the generational quality of our city being deconstructed as we sit here and talk about, oh, these are beautiful plans. Mr. Gavin, what have you done to help the local businesses in the community to profit from any of this? I haven't seen it. I mean, just trainees moving down there, is that it? I mean, the fish market being pushed off to the side, everything else has disappeared. They forced them out of business. Thank you.
I can tell you what we have done is in between 2005 and 2025, the port will have invested $1 billion in the waterfront. And that shows a commitment to creating a better adjacency to the communities in Wilmington and San Pedro, with the intent of creating better economic opportunities in both of those communities. So that investment goes straight to the communities that the port is adjacent to, and is intended to allow for better opportunities. And I think we're seeing some of that. With that comes new development. With that comes new citizens in San Pedro as well, which are absolutely necessary to make all these developments work, to understand how a development works on a 24/7, 7-day-a-week basis cannot rely on outsiders or people from the region generally coming in to do that. We need to see participation and patronage from the local communities, or it doesn't work. And that's what this is being built for as well. So it's being built to encourage everybody from the region, from domestic visitors to international visitors to the local communities, to be able to utilize in a very open way any day of the week. And so that is the intent. Whether or not businesses have been able to stay there or negotiate their way into the new development is not something that's totally in our control, and economics drive that to a high degree. If you're building a development of this size and this magnitude, the costs drive rents where they go, and that doesn't allow for all businesses to be able to maintain their location there. But where we can, like you mentioned with trainees, we found an opportunity to bring trainees down to the waterfront. And we continually encourage others to look at local brands. But the local brands also like to be where they are, and to stretch them too thin and have them on the waterfront and in town, you're taking something away from town potentially as well. So you're taking something away from downtown San Pedro if you do that. And both will build off of each other, we believe, and those local businesses will get stronger because of the amount of traffic that we bring to the waterfront. So we believe the whole ecosystem works together and will continue to work together to build up what we want to see, which is for the economic situation in both San Pedro and Wilmington to improve based on the $1 billion that the port has and will spend in those 20 years that I mentioned.
James Campbell.
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Mike, for the presentation. Very nice. Just a couple of questions and comments. So I think the Port Police will have to significantly increase their force with the addition of all the open space and the problems that go with that. And have you had any discussions with them? The Alpha C, I wasn't sure the timeline you said on that. You said it really fast, and it's been about 9 or 10 years. And what do we see? We see not much over there. What's the timeline of getting it developed, up and running, and across the street of the Gatex of that on the main channel? When is that going to be developed? it really is an oversight to let the red car die. I like the waterfront taxis, great idea, but the red line could be converted to light rail, which would be not subject to all the heavy railroad laws and stuff. And they're a huge success, as you know, in Glendale and other promenades where they have that, and people love to ride that. That's just a sin to let that thing go. You could convert it to light rail and you could make it work, and both have the water taxi and that. Appreciate any comment or answer to the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I already referenced the situation with the red car. Yeah, you can transition it. It's extremely costly to do that. And we would not be in any situation to put in any rigid type of mobility development until the waterfront is developed. And so time-wise, it's just not the time to do that because we have so much to do to understand how people will move about. We're going to just go through this connectivity plan in the next year. Understand that, but that's a place in time as well. 10 years, it's going to be a lot different. So we have to continue to watch how it evolves before any significant hard and rigid infrastructure is put in for mobility. On Alta C, the expectation is that they will break ground in 2023 for the berth 58 through 60 warehouses, and they should be complete there probably in about 18 to 24 months. So that will be up and running. They do have a significant amount of tenants there already, and they will be bringing more in as they finish off their adaptive reuse of those warehouses. They have a requirement in their lease also to come forward with the development plan. I believe it is in 2025 for the berth 7071 portion of that site, which is the other side of the site where the former Westway tank farm was. And so that would come forward. The port needs to clean up that site still, which is our obligation under the lease with Alta C. And then they would move forward with development. So that's further out in the future. We have to get 58 through 60 done. We also have to get 57 done, which is supposed to be the Marine Biology Center there that SCMI is expected to move into, and other universities hopefully can utilize as well. And then there a development of berth 56, and then berth 7071 is the last piece actually. And then the Port Police, they are aware of the open space opening up. That we will need to amenitize some of that open space over time, especially in Wilmington, to bring in other developers to be able to take on some of the burden of not just bringing in people and creating an attraction there, but also to be able to secure the site in San Pedro in the West Harbor area. That will be primarily secured by private security as it's their private development, that 40 acres, and they're responsible to maintain security there, but obviously always augmented by the Port Police. I think those were the questions.
Jason.
Okay, hey, thanks, Mike, for the presentation. Really informative and some good-looking development there. Questions about a little more along the connectivity and transportation and how it will interface to the rest of San Pedro. There's been some already discussion about the red car. Totally understand the car as it existed, the heavy rail configuration, the high mount access necessary, not doable, right? What I have trouble understanding, and maybe you can explain to me or have someone explain to me, is since the gauge of the rail is the same, why is it so expensive to put a light rail train such as you see all over Europe and downtowns, and like you have downtown Portland and places like this, why you cannot put something like that on those tracks? I would like to have someone explain to me why that's so expensive, for one thing. Second of all, LA Metro has long range plans to actually bring the former Green Line and perhaps the Vermont corridor to San Pedro. This is a very long range study. It's not going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years probably, but it will eventually come there. And they've always targeted the termination being somewhere near downtown with the light rail. So it seems like there is a correlation of events here that could be beneficial to San Pedro, having some long range plan in place to not destroy the right of ways that these methods of transit need, that will both be needed in the future. One, to transit along our waterfront, which is quite long, and having a dedicated right of way as opposed to a wheeled trolley, which has to interface with traffic, you end up in traffic, right? But also to have a light rail that will get us connectivity to downtown, to LAX, things like this, so you don't have to drive a car. That's point one of my question. A second point I'd like you to address is, looking at the pedestrian bridge in Wilmington, which is a very beautiful structure, and I'm noticing, and having experienced some difficulty walking from the waterfront to downtown San Pedro because of that intersection. And if you have stoplights transit, now you're going to have traffic backed up. Has there been any thought or discussion of some sort of pedestrian bridge to get us from the waterfront to downtown without having to, play, Frogger with the traffic lights?
Yeah, I don't know if it's exactly Frogger, Jason, because those traffic lights do control the intersection. You don't have to dodge cars generally. So some of that could come up in the connectivity plan. There have been ideas that were looked at as the San Pedro 1 project to provide access that grade separated access from San Pedro 1 into 1 San Pedro into the promenade area. So this is in the area in between 1st and 3rd Street. So that has been looked at a very high level concept. So I'm not sure if that would advance or not. And that was looked at in light of the park amenity that's being built there right now. The concern about the right of way, we maintain all right of ways around the waterfront. So just because we've decommissioned that heavy rail system does not mean that the right of ways don't still exist. We are building a park along Harbor Boulevard in between 1st and 3rd Street in that right of way, but it's not a very expensive park. It doesn't need to be there forever. And like you said, the long range planning is in the 10+ year range. And so as that comes and we understand better what other regional rail systems will come into San Pedro, I think the mindset will be much different if that indeed does happen. And we maintain those right of ways throughout the waterfront. The waterfront was built that way. There's a right of way built all the way down Dave Arian Way from 22nd Street, going all the way out to the Outer Harbor for a cruise terminal. That's the median basically, but it's a right of way, two-way right of way that allows for that. So this has all been planned out that way, and we've not done anything to permanently take out that right of way. It exists everywhere and will be there when the time is right.
So for pedestrian access, I'm particularly talking about the town square area accessing downtown. So the bridge over by, San Pedro 1 on 1st Street is quite a ways, and no one's going to walk all the way down there to walk over a bridge to walk back to downtown. And using traffic lights on that intersection will cause a traffic snarl, because if you have a lot of pedestrian traffic going between downtown and the waterfront, the town square area, you have to transit those lanes. And that's either going to be inconvenient for the pedestrians or for traffic or for both. So my question was more along how you envision including downtown San Pedro in the waterfront's, increased visitorship and amenities, how we pull that together with downtown when we have this barrier of harbor between the two places, and it's not easy to get across it. Yes, there's lights, but if the traffic is as we all expect, and we're pretty sure we're going to see in the future, that's going to be darn inconvenient.
Yeah, that's why we're doing a connectivity plan. So we can look at those ideas, understand when we need to plan for those sort of things. And those will be good problems to have because we have that much traffic that we need to grade separate that street from a pedestrian perspective. Then we've all done something very well. And we need to look at those issues. But the connectivity plan will look at those issues very specifically and understand, because that is the biggest connection that we have to make, is to continue that connectivity between downtown San Pedro, the town square, and the rest of the waterfront. And so looking at ways to make that more inviting, and not just there at that intersection, but coming down from where we're going to see more densely populated areas in downtown is going to be very important going forward. And I think the connectivity plan will spend a lot of time looking into what options we should be planning for well into the future.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Pat Nave.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Could you put
Hey,
up the first slide that you had for the night?
1 second.
I think you answered the question. Oh, no, you had it. Go
Oh,
back.
you want that one, the last slide or the first slide?
First slide.
This is the last slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first slide. This one, it's
Yeah,
almost the same slide.
that one. I think you answered the question with respect to the old Westways site. What is your vision for, and I think you said that was going to Alta-C. What about the site next door to it? And then what about the old GATX site there at the intersection of Minor and 22nd? What's your vision for those properties? That's my first question. I've got several questions. You want them all at one time?
No, let's do them one at a time. So Westway is right here. Which, we talked about that. Which side adjacent to it are you talking about?
Well, there's the one that you got to put your arrow down someplace where I can.
Right
Yeah,
here?
well, yeah, next, go a little bit to out to sea with it a little bit.
Oh.
Other direction. The fenced in area, that's Westways, right?
This
Yeah,
is all Westway right here. It's 17.
Okay, that's all going to Alta Sea?
That's all. Well, they have an option for that. They have to propose a plan. Within their lease, they could end up taking half of it or the whole thing. Yeah.
Do you have any other vision for it?
Not at this time, no. We want that to work synergistically with Alta-C. They have first stab at it, and no, we don't at this point. We're working on other pieces.
Okay, how about the GATX site, the vacant land over here?
This is likely going to become part of, well, first of all, it's being offered as part of the Outer Harbor Cruise Terminal as densified parking for the entire waterfront. So it's a centralized location to allow for that. In the meantime, we're out of parking right now. We're having to park cruise passengers out of the Outer Harbor right now, which is not very efficient. And so we are going to develop this as surface parking, the entire lot, most likely. It's something that we're in the very early conceptual stages on right now, but something that we need immediately. We did not expect this cruise business to jump up so fast after COVID, but it has. And we've had to start parking people at the Outer Harbor. During our peak season now, we're at a deficiency of about 1,000 spaces. So we need to develop more parking, and that's the site we would do it at initially, pending future denser parking development there.
Thanks. Next question is on Warehouse 1. You used the word habitable when you were talking about it'd take a lot of work to make it habitable. Are you contemplating some kind of a residential use for the property?
No, it's actually right now we cannot use the floors above 1 because of fire life safety issues. So I'm just talking about habitable for other commercial uses. I'm not talking about residential.
Okay.
That's not expected there.
Next question has to do with the sailing center in that area, the new park. I was at the Wilmington Neighborhood Council meeting last night, and Steve Bryan was there as president of, as you know, of EcoSim. And as you know, our neighborhood council has commented not only on EcoSim, but also on VOPAC, and particularly pointing out there that there's 110,000 truck trips a year that go right by that park and that intersection. We've proposed, as have the other 3 local neighborhood councils, the movement of the powdered cement by way of rail line with an industrial spur track down Yacht Street. So my question is pretty simple: is there any internal discussion going on at the port about that as an alternative to moving everything by truck, which is 301 truck trips a day of those bulk carriers going by that spot if you went 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year?
Yeah, it doesn't operate 24/7. I don't believe it.
No, but
So
that'd be
one
more
issue. Rail is not a likely scenario because those are all local deliveries, and they're going to specific job sites. So typically, a truck is coming in, they're getting the mix that they need for their specific job, and they're going out to that job locally. It's not being taken from here and then taken somewhere else and further manufactured or further mixed into ready mix. So that it doesn't really match with the intended use.
Actually, well, I'll take that up with you another time. The last question I had, we traveled in in New Zealand some years ago and 7 weeks camping. The only place in all of New Zealand we couldn't get a spot to stay was at the port of Tarangi, which is the country's largest port. They have a campground right across the street from the port. Plus, they have buses that give tours of the port. We couldn't get on that either. There was a day's waiting list to get on the bus that toured the terminals. So when you said earlier, it's talked about passing by several terminals and how, I guess, I don't think you used the word boring, but wasn't something that people would be interested in. I'm wondering, has Port ever considered, would they entertain an offer or a proposal from an operator to have an RV campground in the port, similar to the one that's over in the Port of Long Beach?
I'm not familiar with the one that's in the Port of Long Beach. I mean, we never say no to anything before we look into it and analyze it and talk to the community about it. So I think something was proposed in the last prioritization process for the public access investment plan. If I'm not remembering that right, please correct me. But
That's
it's something
correct.
Correct.
Am I correct? Okay,
Yes,
so
you are.
definitely something we can look at. I'll be quite honest, it's not on the top of the list, but something that can be looked at in the future. I think we have a lot of work in front of us, and like any organization, we have resources available and resources that are unavailable. And so we do our best to prioritize all this stuff, but that's definitely a use we can look at in the future.
Thank you. Excellent job as always, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I think everyone had wanted to ask a question has had the opportunity to do so. I thank you very much, Mike. That was really a great presentation. And I think seeing everything laid out at once like that is very helpful, because we've been kind of seeing bits and pieces of it, but that gave us a more of an overall impression of what's happening. So
Thank
with
you.
that,
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks for all the good questions.
thanks a lot. I do have one final question though. What's, in terms of the connectivity plan, which kept coming up, when do you think they'll be ready to do the first public input session? What's the timing on that?
I think they're shooting for January or February. So they're doing a lot of internal due diligence right now, gathering information. They just really started on the job about a month or so ago. And so they're doing their best to get all that information together, understand all the issues internally, and then turn this thing external. So we're hoping the beginning of next year.
And is there some kind of a plan to come around to the neighborhood councils to talk about it?
I'm not sure if that's specifically the plan. I think it would be a larger format, probably, where they would gather a larger group together at one time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that leaves just one more thing on our agenda, and that is public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? I don't see any. So then that gets us to the issue of our next regular meeting. Our next regular meeting would actually be the day before Thanksgiving. Javier and I are proposing that instead of meeting on the night before Thanksgiving, that because there are 5 Wednesdays in November, that we meet on Wednesday, November 30th. Does anyone have a real objection to that? Okay, so seeing none, our next meeting would be Wednesday, November 30th. And with that, I say happy Halloween and meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, night. Thank you for a great meeting. Good night.
Good night, Jason. Oh, you left too fast. I got a question for Jason. I'm gonna have to call him. Okay. Good night.